Look at this machine, chrome curves catching sunlight. A fiberglass nose slicing through the prairie like a steel arrow. Hand-painted pinstripes running the length of 120 tons of diesel-electric power. This is the Milwaukee Road's Hiawatha, one of dozens of streamlined locomotives that defined American railroading in the 1950s and the 60s. Now look at this. Flat face, right angles, institutional gray, absolutely zero personality. Here's the mystery. Those beautiful streamliners didn't fail. They were fuel efficient, mechanically sound, beloved by crews and passengers alike. Yet by 1985, almost every single one had been stripped and scrapped, erased from American rails. Why? The answer has nothing to do with aerodynamics, nothing to do with horsepower, and everything to do with a single federal decision that quietly rewrote the entire visual language of American transportation. In 1940, railroads didn't just move people, they competed for their souls. The Santa Fe painted its Super Chief locomotives in Warbonnet livery, bold red and yellow stripes that could be spotted from 3 miles away. The New York Central wrapped its streamliners in two-tone gray with lightning bolt graphics. The Pennsylvania Railroad commissioned Raymond Loewy, the man who designed the Coca-Cola bottle, to sculpt a shark-nosed GG1 that became more iconic than most buildings in Philadelphia. This was not vanity. This was branding at 100 miles per hour. Every railroad operated as its own kingdom. They owned their tracks, their stations, their locomotives, their identity. When a passenger saw that Warbonnet nose rounding a distant curve, they knew exactly who they were riding with. The locomotive was the railroad, mobile, three-dimensional advertising that could not be ignored. And railroads spent accordingly. Custom fiberglass noses cost $40,000 to $60,000 per unit, equivalent to $500,000 today. Specialized painters worked for weeks applying hand-masked pinstripes. Some railroads commissioned entirely unique body shells, bulldog noses, shovel noses, stainless steel fluting that required 300 rivets per panel. But beneath that chrome, the balance sheets were turning red. By 1967, passenger rail in America was dying, not declining, dying. Interstate highways had opened a parallel universe where families could travel on their own schedule. Commercial aviation had made cross-country trips a matter of hours, not days. The Pennsylvania Railroad, once the most profitable corporation in America, posted losses of $180 million in a single year. The New Haven Railroad declared bankruptcy. The Milwaukee Road hemorrhaged cash on every passenger train it ran. The streamlined locomotives were fine, magnificent even. The EMDE-8 and E9 locomotives logged hundreds of thousands of miles with minimal mechanical issues. Fuel consumption was competitive with newer designs. Performance was never the problem. The problem was that nobody was buying tickets. By 1970, only 20 railroads still operated inter-city passenger service, and they desperately wanted out. Freight was profitable, and passenger trains were anchors dragging them toward insolvency. The Rock Island proposed simply stopping all passenger service. The Illinois Central calculated it cost $3.20 to provide a service it sold for $1.85. Congress faced a choice: let passenger rail die completely or intervene. They intervened. On May 1st, 1971, the National Railroad Passenger Corporation, Amtrak, took over most intercity passenger rail in America. It was a rescue mission and a fire sale. Amtrak inherited 1,200 passenger cars and 300 locomotives from 20 different railroads, each with its own design philosophy, parts inventory, and maintenance requirements. The new agency operated with a congressional appropriation of $40 million, a budget that assumed ruthless efficiency. And that's when the problem with beauty revealed itself. Walk into any Amtrak maintenance facility in 1972, and you would find chaos. There was a Santa Fe F7 with a cracked fiberglass nose, one that required a mold specific to that model. There was an Erie Lackawanna E8 with custom side panels that only one shop in Hornell, New York knew how to repair. There was a Seaboard Coastline locomotive whose paint scheme required 5 different colors, each needing to be masked and sprayed separately. Roger Lewis, Amtrak's first mechanical officer, later testified before Congress. He said, "We inherited 47 different locomotive types, each with unique body panels, different nose configurations, and incompatible parts. A streamlined nose repair could take 3 weeks. We didn't have 3 weeks. We didn't have $3 million." The math was brutal. Here is what it cost to maintain identity. A cracked fiberglass nose on an EI MDE-9 required a custom mold, skilled fiberglass workers, and 120 hours of labor. The cost was $8,000 in 1973. Repainting a locomotive in its original Santa Fe Warbonnet livery, 5 colors with hand-applied pinstripes, took 200 hours of labor. The cost was $12,000. Here is what it cost to maintain standardization. The new General Motors SDP-40F and EMDF-40PH had modular steel noses. A damaged nose could be unbolted and replaced with an identical unit in 6 hours. The cost was $1,200. Painting the entire locomotive in a single-phase Amtrak livery with no pinstripes and no custom graphics took 40 hours of labor. The cost was $2,400. The difference was not marginal, it was existential. Amtrak's annual maintenance budget in 1974 was $85 million. Congressional appropriations barely covered operations. Every dollar spent on custom fiberglass molds was a dollar not spent on track maintenance, station repairs, or new equipment. The agency was told to standardize or collapse. So they standardized. Internal memos from 1975 show the decision tree. Streamlined locomotives would be retired as soon as their next major overhaul came due. Instead of investing $150,000 to rebuild a custom-bodied E9, Amtrak would spend $250,000 on a new F40PH, a locomotive that every shop could service, that used the same parts as every other F40PH, and that could be repaired without consulting a 1940s blueprint. The iconic Milwaukee Road Hiawatha were retired in 1976. The Santa Fe Warbonnets went to scrap in 1977. The Pennsylvania's Loewy-designed streamliners were cut apart in 1978. It wasn't that streamlining failed, it's that variety became unaffordable. By 1982, the transformation was complete. Amtrak operated a fleet of 150 F40PH locomotives. Every single one had the same boxy nose, the same modular construction, the same two-tone Phase 2 livery of blue and red. From a distance, they were indistinguishable, and that was the point. Maintenance costs dropped by 40%. Parts inventories consolidated. Shop workers no longer needed specialized training for each railroad's unique designs. A locomotive could be serviced in Chicago, San Francisco, or Boston, using the same procedures and the same replacement components. But something else was gone. Regional identity, craft traditions, the visual language that had made railroads recognizable, human, specific. The Milwaukee Road's Hiawathas weren't just locomotives, they were ambassadors for Wisconsin. The Santa Fe's Warbonnets were more than paint. They were the Southwest made mobile. George Spears, a former Santa Fe painter who had spent 30 years applying those red and yellow stripes, gave an interview to Trains magazine in 1980. He said, "They told me I was too slow, too expensive. I told them they were erasing history. They said history does not balance a budget. He was right, so were they." Here is the truth about those streamlined locomotives. They vanished not because they were inefficient, but because they were individual. And in a system forced to choose between survival and identity, survival won. Streamlining did not fail. The business model that could afford it did. When private railroads spent their own money, they bought beauty. When the federal government paid the bills, they bought interchangeability. The locomotives worked equally well either way. The difference was who was writing the checks. This same story is playing out right now in architecture, where cost-optimized glass boxes replace ornamental facades. In automotive design, where regulatory requirements and platform sharing eliminate visual distinction. In consumer electronics, where repairability dies so that supply chains can simplify. We call it progress. We call it efficiency. And maybe it is, but efficiency has a price that does not appear on balance sheets: the erasure of specificity, the flattening of character, the quiet victory of sameness over beauty. Those streamlined locomotives are gone. Almost all of them. A few survive in museums: the E9 locomotives at Galesburg, the Warbonnet at Kansas City, preserved as curiosities from an era when railroads could afford to be recognizable. The rest were cut apart, melted down, turned into rebar and engine blocks, and whatever else you make from 120 tons of obsolete individuality. Look at that boxy F40PH one more time. It is not ugly because engineers stopped caring. It is ugly because caring became too expensive. And that might be the most efficient tragedy of all.